Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Disease and Kygenesis, a supplement range designed specifically for those with kidney disease to support them. And if you haven't watched our podcast before, please make sure you like and subscribe. And in there, you'll see some amazing videos with the beautiful guest I have with me, Stephanie Modavis. Stephanie is an absolute gift to the kidney world. Her journey has been a very personal one. She's gone through 2 kidney transplants herself. She's a coach, a spiritual teacher, yoga instructor. She works in and goes into the cold front with people going through transplants and dialysis, and goes in there to really help support people navigate the journey in the healthcare system. And she has joined the Kidney Coach team as one of our coaches. You'll see her details. They might be already on the website by the time this goes live. And I'll put them all in below, but she does one-on-one coaching with our community as well, especially with people that are about to go through a transplant or are going through kidney dialysis, because she knows this probably better than anyone, going through it twice and then being in the hospital system. So she brings an absolute wealth of knowledge, and she's joining me again today to talk about how to do convalescence properly, because I don't think many of us know how to do that. So Stephanie, welcome back to the podcast, and thank you for being your beautiful glowing self and sharing your time with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I love everything that you do, because the holistic perspective is just so sorely missed within the system. So I am always delighted to be here as a guest.
Well, we're always delighted to have you on, and I think, I haven't met anyone I know lots of people that have gone through one transplant or done lots of dialysis, but never twice. And your journey is, a really very profound one of just how you've had to navigate the system and how you empowered yourself. And really, I think it's really amazing how you really looked at yourself and what you could do to better the journey and to make sure that going forward, it was a really, as much as it can be, a positive experience. And it was interesting. I was presenting at a long haul COVID conference last weekend, and one of the things that a lot of the presenters talked about was pacing and then convalescence. And I thought about it and I was like, I'm not great at convalescence, because we're in this society of being busy, busy, busy. For a lot of people, their self-worth comes off productivity and how much they're putting out into the world. And when you have a chronic disease, and when you're going through something like a transplant, for goodness sakes, or dialysis, that ability to turn down busyness and refocus on healing ourselves can be really hard for people when they're not putting out into the external world, especially if your self-worth is tied up in that. And I know you're a type A, you're an achiever, you've got all of that about you. So I was really interested to hear how you navigated that for yourself and healed so profoundly, but still felt like you had worth, and, all of those things that I think really can trip people up when we're dealing with chronic disease. And that's what I'm really excited to deep dive in with you today. So I'm going to just hand it over to you, and I will listen to your words of wisdom here, because I'm sure you have far more than me when it comes to convalescence.
Oh, well, Fiona, thank you. When we decided we were going to go into this topic today, it doesn't sound like the most exciting topic, right? Let's talk about convalescence. But I have to tell you that I am delighted to share this little presentation with you, because it actually coalesced one of my other passions, which you'll see in this little slideshow that I presented. So let's just get started. And so here we go. We're going to start with the basics. The title of this, I wanted to make sure that I was clear that there is a much higher order purpose to convalescence. Being a patient, because of the way that the traditional system is, and our minds are on survival, which is very much of a physical oriented process. And convalescence isn't really quite physical. It's something a little bit different. So I just wanted to start with a basic definition, so we're all on the same page here. So it just says convalescence, associated with physical recovery from illness or injury, is a crucial yet frequently overlooked component of holistic healing. This period of gradual return to health encompasses not just physical recuperation, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual restoration. Fiona, I've had autoimmune disease and kidney disease for more than half of my life. And I've never had one provider, and I've seen a plethora of providers all across the United States at some of the most prestigious institutions mention convalescence or even indicate how to do it. The word never even came up. So I believe that having this information that we're going to go through would actually be something that I wished I would have had at the beginning of my journey, because this is something that I came to through many, many years of figuring out and failing very often of, how do we actually go through this process? So basically, I just read this definition of convalescence here, and we'll just move on. There you go. That's much better. Now I can see you. All right. So the holistic nature of convalescence. So most of traditional healthcare is not holistic in their treatment plans. They're very much of how do we try to keep you alive? And this holistic nature of physical illness is somewhat out there in the ethers. And if you're lucky enough to come across it throughout your process to help you, well, then you're fortunate. But most people that I know come across this kind of stuff when it's too late. So I think this is just great that we're talking about this. So I have here, convalescence goes beyond mere physical recovery. It's a time of integration, reflection, and transformation that touches all aspects of our being. So I have a couple of examples here. Physical, most often we have to stop and rest and have a gradual return to normal activities. For me, that was very difficult to do. As you said and called me out, I am a type A personality. I remember at the time when I was at my sickest, I had 2 dogs, and I'd see dust bunnies in the corner as I was laying in bed, and it would eat me up that I didn't have the energy to go up and just grab that dust bunny and throw it in the garbage and mop the floor. Laundry was building up, dishes were building up, and guess what? I had to ask for help, which was really hard for me to do. So I can visually go back in my process and remember those times where I had to accept that I had no choice. I almost felt like God was putting me in the corner, and He was like, you have no choice but to sit your tush down right now and to rest. So it really showed me myself. My illness was a very clear mirror of what I was resistant to in my life. And that's a gift that you can see in hindsight. So then you've got mental components of convalescence, time for cognitive processing and reframing of experience. That sounds really nice and pretty, and usually doesn't come until after you have those kind of shadowy emotions come up, like feeling sorry for yourself. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? I feel guilty. I'm ashamed that I'm sick. All of the feelings will show themselves to you when you're in a stage of settling, kind of, I would say, embracing the convalescence. So it's not just like you're physically ill and then there's convalescence. Most people aren't like that. It's like, no, there's actually a battle in between those two spaces.
100%. And that's, and especially with chronic disease, say you haven't gone through, transplant or dialysis, and you're just managing, say stages 3 and 4, and having to put time away to exercise and meditate and to eat well. There's that battle. I know for me, with MS and a spinal cord injury, it is a daily battle, and it has been for the last 3 years of, between putting out, and a lot of my self-worth comes from doing. And then this, exactly as you said it, and it's a daily, I have a 10-minute pity party for myself every day, and then on we go.
Exactly. All right. So then we have, emotional processing of feelings. That's a lot of what we just mentioned as well. And working as you surrender to try to restore an acceptance, some sort of emotional balance, which again, I mean, let's just say this. I never realized how stubborn I was until I got sick. I mean, I didn't realize all the problems I had until I was faced with not doing that which I wanted to do. It's really hard, but it does happen. I'm here to say that you can surrender to this, and you can, oh my goodness, I mean, the power of convalescence is just, it's the best thing that's come out of it. So, and then you have some spiritual things that can arise in your convalescence, really questioning life, looking at your life, realizing that life is fleeting, and seeking meaning with where you're at and where you've been and where you may be going, and just really looking at the deeper aspects of self, which again kind of comes and goes. It's a little bit of a roller coaster, but once you surrender more and you soften more into, you know, the acceptance of your experience, you can get some really profound insights from it as well. All right, so I have here the wisdom within illness, which sounds really funny, but there is such profound wisdom within any experience. I mean, most of the saints and the sages and the mystics and all of, you know, the really amazing people throughout history have struggled with something. And physical illness, in the spiritual perspective, it forces you into a different realm of being, and it gives a lot of experience in a place that you're not used to experiencing. So it's interesting how in those, you know, certain mystics and sages and saints, it's that coalesced with who they are made them whole and complete, which is very interesting. So yeah, so here we go.
And it is, you're right, that point is finding wholeness in an area where you think you're not whole. It's such a hard thing to do, but it is the whole gift, as you said, with the wisdom within illness.
Absolutely. So yeah, so it says here that, you know, they recognize illness and the subsequent recovery period to be profound teachers, which is absolutely true in my case. It wouldn't have to be true if I kept fighting it. I could be a victim to my condition for my entire life, and I could every single day of my life complain that I have to take medicine for my transplant, or complain about this or complain about that. So this is really where, you know, it's your choice at some point, you know. So and then I just have a little quote here: the highest levels of performance come to people who are centered, intuitive, creative, and reflective, people who know how to see a problem as an opportunity. And that's just what I said, is that, look, having kidney disease is going to change your life. If you understand how, and you start to learn how to navigate it by incorporating a holistic perspective, you will start to see the opportunity within your illness. And again, that's probably the greatest gift, as we mentioned, is that you're no longer a victim. You don't feel like something has power and control over you, because that, to be, you know, disempowered in that respect, affects every aspect of your life. So there has to be a very deep searching to realize that this has come to you as some sort of a gift. It's not a welcome one. I don't know anybody who's like, yay, I have kidney disease. but there can be, you know, again, it's really a profound gift if you can work through it with compassion. So some more spiritual perspectives on illness and healing. Buddhism views illness as an opportunity for spiritual growth and understanding and permanence. Not the funnest thing to understand, but a reality we will all face. Right?
Absolutely. We're not going to live forever.
Right. Christianity sees suffering as a potential path to spiritual refinement and closeness to God, which any spiritual teacher will say, you know, the path to enlightenment is through suffering, unfortunately. You know, which again, not fun. But that this is when we start to see life we start to mature. We go through a maturation process. So it's a gift. Indigenous traditions view illness as a message from the spirit world, requiring introspection and realignment.
I love it. Yeah.
There's actually such beauty in this, but you don't hear any of this coming from the West, where I am. I don't know how the medicine is where you are, but could you imagine if this worldview was offered to you when you got your diagnosis?
Yeah, it's a whole different way of looking at things, because I think a lot of people feel, and you've mentioned this, guilt and shame about what did I do wrong, and why punished, and if there is a God, like, am I being punished for something? Is it, I'm a bad person for
Yeah.
letting this in? And even a lot of the new spiritual stuff is, well, you create your reality. So you
Yeah.
created this. And,
Mm,
I've spent a lot of time in those words, and they're toxic and can be very devastating for people that have spent a lot of time in that world, rather than a reframe, as you've presented here in the slide, which I think is a much healthier way of looking at things. It's just a redirect and an opportunity for
yeah.
growth, to really deepen your connection with self and
Yeah.
whatever else is out there.
Right. It's easy to say you create your own reality when you're trying to manifest money or a new job or a car, right? I agree. I think the mind is extraordinarily powerful. Don't get me wrong, and I think that we do contribute to our reality. But at the end of the day, how could we possibly believe that we are in full control of everything? That's such an incredible amount of pressure to put on somebody. There's just no way. So yeah, I think we have to be careful with that, like spiritual, the bypassing and the create your own reality, because that's extraordinarily. If I were to go into the hospital with the patients that I see, right?
Yeah.
I see 50 people in the same day, and I've told them, why did you create your illness?
Yeah, it is. That's just so destructive. I mean, imagine that. Like, it's what people don't realize, and I think unless you've been through a chronic disease, is the sub context of that is shaming.
It is shaming. And now, listen, is there an opportunity for someone who is basically an adept to you go to them and say, why did you create your illness? If somebody said that to me, I could have a non-emotional answer to that. But that's
Mm.
because I'm 25 years into my own spiritual healing process. But you're right. It's very shaming. And some of the new age practices, I think we need to be really, really careful around, really careful. I think it works in some respect, but I think there's a lack of it's reductionistic to say the least. So
I agree.
okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds great, but
If it
you
were
know,
that simple.
right, right. So here we are. So some more mental and emotional aspects of convalescence. Our mental and emotional states undergo significant changes. This is true. And I've discovered that when I was resisting the surrender to the convalescence, I could fake being normal.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, because I remember times where I was very sick and I was on dialysis and, I just didn't want to really be around anybody. But if I just ignored it, I tried to ignore. Like there were times where I'm like, how can I just ignore this and pop into this personality? And maybe that'll give me some relief for a minute. And sometimes it did.
Yeah.
Sometimes it did. But at the end of the day, again, I couldn't run away from it. And the nature of who I am at my core, I mean, I came into this world as a little bit of an outlier. My parents were not that self-aware themselves. I didn't have the degree of love and support that a young child probably needed. My parents were very young themselves. So I've been trying to run away from things my whole life.
You're right.
I couldn't run away from this no matter what I did. There was no law of attractioning my way out of this.
Yeah.
None,
Well,
right? So, yeah. So, let's see. So, convalescence can help eventually with stress reduction. The enforced rest period allows for the nervous system to reset. And I had that. I remember very vividly when I finally surrendered to the fact that I had kidney disease and I was starting to get sicker and I didn't know what my future was. I just remember it was like, I mean, I just probably looked up like to God and was like, I can't do this. I can't carry this anymore. I can't do it myself. So, but it was a profound moment because it was really me for the first time in my life surrendering.
how
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, emotional processing. After you're done fighting yourself, you can do some emotional processing. And I did. Oh my goodness. Again, the constant mirror in front of me throughout those stages, of just showing me myself. And I remember at times even laughing when I started to realize, like, okay, I'm going to get a taste of my own medicine here during my convalescence. And, I had to laugh at myself sometimes at how, just how crazy I was at times. And just, like, I couldn't get out of my own head because I couldn't pick up that little dust bunny in the corner. I just thought, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was that neurotic.
Nothing like an illness and being, bedridden to actually see just how much goes on here, right?
Exactly. Right. So then the last one here is cognitive restructuring, which takes time, but you do absolutely gain a new perspective on life, on your priorities, and often new values and new principles emerge. So how do I say this properly? I've been becoming a new person since I got diagnosed. I was Stephanie Modavis prior to my diagnosis. Then I got diagnosed, and I've been in a process of becoming since then. And I will be for the rest of my life now. So difficult, but also beautiful. So another one on some spiritual experiences and insights, definitely increased awareness, right? It allowed, when I slowed down, it allowed for greater mindfulness and presence. That was another thing. There were so many times where, I couldn't, we'd go to the grocery store and I didn't have the energy to walk into the store. So I'd sit in the car, right? And I would watch people with their carts and who was putting their cart away and who wasn't, and like really being in the moment, observing. Again, I was always in the rat race, always on autopilot. So it forced me to be present with things, the trees, just taking time. And after a while, I really learned to actually love that, to really be present. And I was doing yoga prior to my diagnosis. So I had a level of presence. But when you can't do anything else, it expands it to its optimal capacity pretty much. So existential questioning, definitely, it leads to a deeper life questions and meaning making, which I think I mentioned before. Definitely, I started to tell myself, if I make it through this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to have that difficult conversation with this person. It just was a call for such a profound, robust healing process. Like I wanted to forgive. I wanted to make amends with people. This was, I'm going back to when I was really ill and my convalescence was at its highest. So
yeah, makes sense.
And then even some transpersonal experiences. So I did have that, because I also meditated, and then I had the convalescence on top of it. So I had some experiences where I just, saw visions or had really profound insights. One thing that I'll tell you that was kind of interesting quickly is that before I started dialysis, I had a near-death experience. I think I mentioned it to you on a prior podcast, with hemorrhaging into my lungs. And basically, I went unconscious, and I had an experience where I woke up in that unconsciousness, and I was in a field, and there was a Native American elder there. And everything stopped. Everything was still and calm. The only thing that was moving was just the grass, just gently moving back and forth. And he grabbed my hand, and I remember looking over at him, feeling at such peace. And he said, "I'm going to take you back."
Wow.
And then I woke up a couple days later on dialysis, actually.
Wow.
These are things that happen. So it doesn't happen that same way for everybody, but it's good to know that these things they're actually, you know, they're not common, but they're not abnormal.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a little quote here. I enjoy convalescence. It is the part that makes the illness worthwhile.
Well, isn't that a great thing to say? Because I think that's the crux of it, right? The convalescence is where you'll do the deep dive and the dig into, the learning, the messaging, the meaning making. I mean, humans are meaning makers, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned in Western medicine, and it is the same here in Australia, that we don't get anything around this. And there's this, oh, you're going for a transplant. You and I have spoken about it in a previous podcast. You're almost cured. Off you go and enjoy your life. And it's like, wow, you've just, been near death, had to have 2 new organs put in. And how do we integrate that and make that part of your process? And how do you go forward with that in life? And make that part of your journey, rather than this sort of bookend, life stopped there, redid, and then off I go again, which misses the whole. I know you're smiling, you understand that, missing that whole, the potential to see a deeper meaning. I don't know whether there's a better word, maybe you have it in there, but just to be able to make sense out of some of our experiences, I guess.
You make total sense. And this was what I had been advocating for so long, is that because of my background as a yogi, and because of my spiritual mentoring that I've done and my own personal studies, is I have come to a place where I believe in my heart that the illness carries great messages. And it's not just to put an organ in or to treat or medicate the disease. And I understand that the traditional medical models, they do a great job at attempting to save lives, and they do save lives in some capacity. But we aren't just materialistic physical beings that need parts replaced. And I believe that the entirety of the medical system is profoundly lacking the feminine wisdom that comes with healing. And this is, I'm going to get into this, and I'm so happy that we're talking about this, because this has been another part of my mentoring and work that I do in the world, and I'm so happy that they're merging here. But before we talk about that, let's talk about, so what is the problem with convalescence then, if it has all these wonderful potentials? And there's a lot of them. So this is exactly what you were talking about. Okay. So our Western culture, and I'm guessing yours, and I'm learning many of the other cultures that I'm not familiar with, have a high value on masculine energetic traits. So what happens is, well, I'll just read them here. What's the problem? Economic pressures is a problem. Many people feel they can't afford to take extended time off work to recover due to financial obligations and lack of paid sick leave.
Huge one, especially in the States. I see this. It's a little easier in Australia because our medical systems are a little bit more forgiving. But, the out-of-pocket expenses that I see, if you don't have insurance, of what Americans have to pay for medications and to go through this, and you're like, no one's given the opportunity to convalesce because they got mouths to feed and children to look after. It actually really breaks my heart that this is a reality for so many people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it is that bad and worse. And there's been a lot of talk recently. I've been seeing a lot of podcasts discussing alternative ways of doing health insurance. And this is a very new here in the States. But basically, people are coming out, podcasting, and saying, my work allots me an excellent plan, but my out-of-pocket is still totally high. And I find myself not going to the doctor when I need help because I have a $10,000 deductible. So we're hitting this roadblock now where even people who have great insurance here, it's not cutting it. It's not cutting it. It's just becoming ridiculous. It's becoming ridiculous. So, and then we've also got, the productivity culture. So there's often a lot of societal pressure to return to life as quickly as possible, with rest seen as unproductive.
Yeah.
Lack of social support. With busy lifestyles and dispersed families, many lack the support network needed for extended convalescence at home.
Mm-hmm.
Personal, this is a personal one, impatience for quick fixes.
Yep.
This is our
Yep.
self-responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
There's an expectation for rapid recovery through medication or procedures rather than allowing the healing process to occur naturally.
I
right?
always say with kidney disease, healing is a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And I know so many people with kidney disease and even on dialysis who still are in these mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they just, I think that really, unless you're shown, you're almost blind to yourself, and you're just doing what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So it's sad. So then again, this is another one, stigma around weakness, right? Taking time to convalesce may be seen as a sign of weakness or laziness in achievement-oriented cultures.
Absolutely. I fall into this one. This is a big one.
I mean, most men here in the States won't even go to the doctor, let alone take time to convalesce. And this has happened to me too with kidney disease. And I think it's important that I bring this up because not until I got near death did I look near death with kidney disease. But I'll be quite frank and honest, I almost died from my autoimmune disease as well. But you can still have an appearance that doesn't look too unhealthy, but you're literally near death's door. And I even had people, I had to get some extra help through the state when I was sick. And the lady said to me, I just had gotten out of the hospital, I was in a wheelchair, and she said, "You don't look sick."
Yeah.
I had almost died that time in the hospital. So there's just such a lack of awareness. It's sad. And then I know a lot of females in particular who have autoimmune disease and kidney disease, and they get told all the time, "You don't look sick."
Yeah. It's a common one, isn't it?
Even by their loved ones. Even by their loved ones, they'll say, "Like, you're in bed again." There's unless you've experienced it, you're always going to be missing the mark a little bit. And people, should be aware of this, because somebody who's very sick, the last thing you want someone to, your loved one to think you're lazy.
100%. Yeah.
So that's a difficult one.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. So the constant connectivity. So again, now we have this addiction crisis with all of our technology. So convalescence isn't necessarily laying in bed to scroll on TikTok all day.
No, it's not. Very well put.
But some people, that's what they think convalescence is let me lay down and distract myself through something else.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm not saying watching a movie is bad or being on TikTok a little, but convalesce means do nothing. Just really rest and do nothing. See how that feels for a little bit, So then lack of value placed on rest. Western societies often don't recognize the importance of rest and recovery for overall health and well-being. I mean, we have, this grind culture here in the West, where it's like, we're going to teach you how to get 6 hours of sleep a night so you can be up and productive. And, it's always about, longevity and maximizing your productivity and your, we don't even respect the importance of rest. But then we simultaneously complain and have an insomnia and lack of sleep problem.
Yeah, I'm laughing because you're so right. It's funny. I unsubscribed to a very popular podcast yesterday because it was like, this is how I 11 tips to maximize. And it was like, if I'm awake, I'm either working out or I'm working. There is nothing else. And I was like, whoa, like this is what the toxicity in that statement. And I was like, this is why people are getting weird ass diseases, and autoimmune diseases particularly is what I see in this type of culture. Because the body is amazing. It's just like, well, if you're not going to break, guess what? I'm going to put the handbrake on for you, which was definitely my story. And so, yeah, I see this toxicity as you mentioned, it's especially in a masculine toxicity about succeeding and grinding and how to maximize and money. And you can sleep when you die is another saying I hate. It's just like, oh, really? Come on, people, really?
Yeah. And, I follow probably some similar people on YouTube, and there's a place for some of that. There's a place for it, but I am at where you're at as well, where it's almost now they're competing with each other to see who can be more productive and do it's the masculine run amok. He doesn't
Mhm.
see himself. And,
Mhm.
eventually something probably will come to a head, because you can only have that mentality for so long. But I definitely know what you mean when you say that. And it's becoming very unattractive, for me as
Yeah,
well. So, and then you got healthcare system constraints. Here, it's like, short hospital stays and limited follow-up care can rush the convalescence process. Here, kidney donors, there's this running narrative here in the West, which has a double-edged sword, because we need so many kidney donors because we're short, right? We have so many people waiting for transplants that they try to encourage donation. But one of the stigmas and the common phrases I see in the world with donation is, oh, it's like getting your gallbladder out. You'll be back to work out of the hospital in 2 days, and you'll be back to work in like a week or two. So it's like
wow.
they promote that rhetoric, I think, to make donors feel more comfortable, but it's not. It's partly accurate, but not fully accurate.
Mhm.
Do you see how they're using their language to try to, coerce and, and I guess they don't want them to be scared, but the reality is I think we need to be a little more truthful,
Mhm.
because they
Yeah,
do need time. Donors do need time to rest, and transplant patients too. They'll
absolutely.
say, oh, you get your transplant 6 weeks, whatever, and then go back to work. They're very cautious with the medicines and, following up on things, but it's just the way that it is. So next one is individualism. So the emphasis on self-reliance. Again, this is a personal one, can make it really challenging to accept help during
Mm.
recovery. One thing I learned when I got sick was that I couldn't ask for help, because I was that parentified child where I had to learn at an early age how to take care of myself and try to make sure my parents were happy. So then I hyper glorified it, right? I became very hyper vigilant with my independence and being an individual. And then you have, the feminist movement, and I don't need any help. I can do it myself. I'm a strong woman, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
all of this was very confrontational when I got sick, because it was so hard for me to say I need help. I would crawl across the floor to get something I need before I asked someone for help. It was very pathetic.
Oh, Stephanie, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I get this one. I'm just as bad.
Yeah. Yeah. But at some point, I have to say that it became so pathetic, and I was very aware, that I realized I kept getting put in those situations where I was like maximizing my self-reliance to the point where I almost couldn't, like, I realized, it clicked in my head,
Yeah.
oh, I'm continuing to get placed here because someone's trying to teach me how to ask for help.
Yeah. And it's a
So at
really
some
hard.
point I caught on.
Yeah, and it is especially as a female that, where we've made, and everything that you mentioned before with I have a lot of issues with some of the feminine movement for this reason, because it has become, and for men as well, just to even ask for help, and just how disempowering that has made. But we're social beings, we're meant to ask for help. And I'm lucky I've got such good people around me that it's not a big deal. But it's taken me, like you, a long time to be able to ask for help and not feel a great deep sense of shame that comes with it, which is what I had to get over and through, which has been the biggest hurdle. But yeah, crazy, huh? Just
Yeah,
asking for help.
exactly. We don't need to talk about the feminist movement, but I'm learning, I'm doing a coaching course actually. It's called Gender Intelligence, and I'm learning a lot more about men and women. And the gentleman said the other day, who teaches the course, he said, "Do you know how happy it makes a man when you ask him for help?" He said, "If
Mm.
you're a female, you can ask almost any man for help, and he'll feel like a hero because he wants to help you."
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, it took me again, I had to be decondition myself from aspects of the the feminist movement for sure. So and then we've got fast-paced lifestyle, right? Just normal life is fast, makes it difficult to slow down, just everything's moving. I mean, and nowadays, my goodness, it's like I don't even know how the planet isn't spinning out of control with how fast things are moving. So, you know, and then consumer culture. So like this focus on the material goods and experiences can overshadow the need for rest and reflection. Just this like, oh, I got to do this or let me like this constant externalization that's valued over internalization. There's a great author who wrote a book called The Divided Mind, and he pretty much uses the same references for the right and left hemisphere of the brain. So basically, there's these two aspects, okay? And it's very clear that the majority of the world has adopted the let's call it the patriarchal view. I don't have to say anything. I don't want to get into, you know,
Mhm.
bashing the patriarchy, but there is an exceptional imbalance, right? So if you just look at the masculine energy traits, most men and women are falling into these traits,
Mhm.
right? Assertive, active, focused, competitive, intellectual, goal oriented, analytical, structured, reason, stability, logic, constantly in the head, just
Yeah.
thinking. So when I practiced yoga, you know, this is where I really learned about this balance, especially when I started teaching yin yoga for healing. That was the
Mhm.
first time I was really, you know, I'd never done a yoga class, an hour-long yoga class where I had done 5 yoga postures in the entire hour of the class, because we rested and held these supportive positions for so long to get deeper into the body. But let me tell you something, when yin yoga became popular in the West, which was really, I'd say maybe like 10 years ago, not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, all of the female yogis in the West who were doing vinyasa and ashtanga and the very active oriented yoga practices, all of a sudden every studio had yin yoga all over the place because it was such a gaping hole, such a need. And when women started slowing down and coming together and going deep into the body and just relaxing and supporting each other, and all of a sudden, all of these other beautiful forces started to open up. So the feminine energy, in my opinion, is where healing occurs. So if I'm going to look at the uh, kind of the macro scale of healthcare, I would say healthcare, as we know it, is masculine. It's like a fireman putting out a fire. I'm going to try to solve this problem. I'm going to try to put this kidney in. It's like, how do I keep this body alive? But I don't see any healing processes. We've even lost what that looks like or what it means.
I totally agree with you. You've said it so eloquently. I'm 100% on the same page there.
Yeah. So I think if we're going to do this right from the start, we need to understand that most likely, you know, you could do an easy assessment test online or personality test or whatever, but most people really lie heavily in the overthinking and overdoing and externalizing. So
Mhm.
if you're just aware, okay, this illness is also here to get you to integrate your other side. And you're going to think it's totally useless because that's what our world is telling us right now. But you'll come to learn and embrace that you were only half of your potential before this happened to you. That literally, when I really started doing this work and really embracing my feminine aspect of slowing down and going within and just really investigating my inner landscape, I kept doing that even as I recovered.
Yes, good.
And I need it desperately because
Mhm.
my proclivity, my default is hypervigilant type A masculine energy,
Mhm.
which isn't good for me. I notice that when I'm in my high masculine, my blood pressure is high.
Interesting.
I don't feel it. Literally, my blood pressure is high when I'm in my masculine, overly. If I am in my feminine, my heart rate's better, my blood pressure is better.
Mhm.
It's almost like I got to this place in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, is like the trick to healing just being in the feminine energy, like being balanced? I don't know, but like I've really discovered it's so incredibly helpful. So for anybody watching, you might think like yoga, this, that, the other thing, just start to do some research,
Yeah.
because there's many things you can do to help you connect with your inner world, your subjective inner landscape. It's not all about out there in the matrix externally. Like that's just really the reflection of what's going on within us internally often.
Yeah.
So if you can really calm this down on the inside, a lot of times your immediate surroundings will and your body will feel more calm. So it's definitely, I think, the way to approach convalescence is to understand that this is you really embracing this side of you. And if you're a man watching this and you're unfamiliar with these principles, this lies within every woman and man, right? Again, like Ian McGilchrist says, the left brain is the logical, analytical, masculine energy side of the brain, and the right brain would be more of the interconnectivity and these principles. So you don't want to get it, the masculine feminine mixed up with like only woman, only man, because I'm sure many men watching this may look at this chart. I've had many men look at this when they have problems with their female partner, and they're like, oh my gosh, my wife is all masculine. and that's why they butt heads. There's
Yeah.
not a balance. So okay, so integrating the lessons of illness, this is another thing that you said, Fiona, is that there's absolutely no integration in healthcare.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a PhD about this, and she was she was a little bit, I think I confronted her in a way where she wasn't sure what to do with me. I think we had this conversation where it's like, you're not really like a patient, but you're not a doctor, and you're a little bit threatening. I don't know what you're trying to bring into my world of medicine here. But she said to me, patients aren't going to understand Jungian dynamics, Carl Jung integration, and I was like, we don't have to talk about Carl Jung, but we do have to talk about integration, because that concept is incredibly important, right? So yeah, convalescence provides an opportunity to step back and gain that perspective. um, Again, like a life review. I think for me, that's definitely, I was very close to facing my own death, and to have a life to review your life before you have your life review officially is
Yeah.
actually very, very beautiful. And I lived much more fully when I almost died and did this life review. Like it's almost like I got a second chance. So again, that narrative that the healthcare providers give you, which is accurate but reductionistic, which says you got your new organ, your back's life, you got a second chance at life. They're missing the whole feminine component, which is like, no, actually, I really got a second chance of how I'm doing my life and how I'm being in my life. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
to me, actually, this work I feel was actually more powerful and more challenging than actually going through the physical process. Yes, it wasn't fun, but once I did this, it gave my life and my illness the meaning that the system never allotted me, because to them I was broken and something was wrong.
That's such a big thing, isn't it? That narrative about being broken and wrong, which is the narrative in that masculine go system, whereas obviously the feminine is what an opportunity it is to reconnect yourself to wholeness through a disease, which is how I would reframe it. So yeah.
I want to be careful to just clarify that I love men and I love the masculine. There's a role for you. We love you. It's just there is a profound imbalance. And this is why we see hyper-masculinized women. We're starting to see feminized men. Like things are energetically all over the place. But you know, it's I love the masculine energy. He's half of the whole.
100%. We absolutely need it. And I think there is I often speak about this with my male friends. There's a huge problem if we try to skew too far the other way. We're going to end up in exactly the same thing flipped. We just need to come together in wholeness, which is both. We need both.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes. So we're almost done here. So value clarification. Again, totally. I reassessed everything about what truly mattered in my life. I had different principles. First off, I never really sat down in my life and said, what really are my values and principles in my life? Who like let me really get clear about who I am and how I want to live the rest of my life. Nobody ever, I was just going along in life thinking I was doing everything that everyone else did. And I never had any, 12 years of school and college, and man, the things that I did not learn that I needed to learn, So, and then last thing, some future visioning. Totally. I was like, if I get through this, I'm going to do life differently. Yeah. That's when I became a yoga teacher. And I opened up my yoga studios. I said, I have to serve in a way that's healthy for me. And I saw the value in this so much that I thought, how can I offer this space of convalescence, which they used to have spaces of convalescence. They used to have those.
Wow.
Where people could go and rest and relax and have permission and be allowed to I think that probably is kind of like a modern day take on yoga studios and different sorts of, well, not all of them now, because now I've noticed even the yoga studios have gotten masculinized very often. It's like, so it's just this pull towards production is something that we just, everything is getting hijacked that's even meant to slow us down. So I think we always have to be vigilant of, am I connected with my inner landscape and, this energy of convalescence. So so this meta perspective leads to what psychologist William Bridges calls the neutral zone, a fertile period of uncertainty where new beginnings can take root. And that's really what I just love that, because again, it's almost like the convalescence is taking that masculine, introducing the feminine and pulling them together. We're like that 0 point where something new can be birthed. Like if somebody would have told me this at any time throughout my illness, my whole experience would have been different. I'm glad that I've come to this, but I painstakingly came to this. You know what I mean? So I'm happy to be sharing. Thank you so much again for letting me share. So just this last one. So ways to that neutral zone: create space, allow ample time for rest and reflection, journaling about your experiences. I started writing a lot and just writing about how I feel, and honestly how I feel. Like today sucks. I hate today. How long am I going to have to do this for? Not trying to sugarcoat it. It was forcing me to be radically honest. I had to let all of my parts be seen. Wasn't going to let me get away. So mindfulness practices, yoga, gentle meditation. We talked about that already. Connection with nature. I mean, Mother Nature is the sacred feminine, so go by water, go outside. I mean, it's so easy to want to just hide when you're sick. Hide in your room, hide in your bed. That's just get up and go outside.
Yeah, that's I totally agree. Nature's my biggest healer. I love her. I'm looking outside. Got trees and things everywhere because I live in nature, but it's definitely a big one for me.
Definitely. And then, creative expression. You know, I started making, I'm not an artist, but when I was going through healing from my second transplant, there was a trend called, oh shoot, I forget what it was called, but it was like liquid, like acrylic liquid, and you'd put some silicone in it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Fluid art. It was called fluid art.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, I can do this. And actually, it was great because you'd mix colors in a little cup with some silicone and some glue or some thinner, and you'd just flip the cup over and you'd let it, and it was so beautiful because when I think of art, because I'm so conditioned in my masculine, I'm like, I'm immediately going to a Renaissance painting and figuring out how I could possibly do that. And like, how crazy is that? I don't have that skill, but I made some amazing fluid art by just flipping that cup on the canvas. And to see how, like, I guess I just realized how much I was blocking myself because I felt that I wasn't good at something, you know? So it was beautiful. And then lastly, seek support, right? Talk to people, peer mentors, advisors, therapists that you trust, or support groups.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. And I think there were so many gems in there for people. And I just, yeah, you know, like I said earlier, like healing is a marathon, not a sprint. And part of the marathon is all of those things you spoke about. And we'll just say it is masculine and feminine, but it's so much more than that. But the masculine side of a new organ and taking the medication and doing all of that stuff is so necessary. Like we need that. There's such a huge place for that. We can't do it without it. But then there's all this other stuff that we can do, like connecting with nature and spending extra time in bed and writing in our journals and breathing. And it's the whole stopping to smell the roses and become present with what our life actually looks like. And then from there, as you said, back in that neutral zone, you know, you get to rebirth and create a life that's a bit more balanced and a greater reflection of what you would like to express yourself as in the world, rather than, which is very Western, how the world has dictated for you to express yourself, be it a corporate or, you know, this whole ladder or whatever it is about this consumerism rat race sort of society that we're in. I really do believe that this ease and illness gives us a reset to go back in the world and create from a space of wholeness, and which is what you've done, right? You said, if I heal, I'm going to go and do this. And now look at these beautiful gifts that you're bringing out to the world that support your continuous growth and journey and exploration into the depths of who you are. You've managed to incorporate that in how you express yourself in the world. What a beautiful gift that your illness is.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy because the world often doesn't recognize the value of it. But I've pushed my way gently and gracefully. I shouldn't say push, let's say I committed to I'm not going back into the world with one half of my being, right? So I think just to wrap it up on my end, is an easy way to think about it is start to examine how much you're doing as opposed to how much you're being. And that's part of this process is for me, there had to be an understanding that being and doing were divine complements, and one couldn't take priority over the other. And when you're convalescing, it's about you learning how to surrender to being.
I'm not going to say anything over the top of that because that's perfect. So if you want to know, but there's nothing to say. That is absolutely perfect. So Stephanie is part of our team. I put all the details in below how you can connect with her. She is doing one-on-one coaching. And then if you find the magic of Stephanie, that I know you will, she does then do big, longer packages with you. And you can really deep dive into some of this stuff and really maximize, you know, if you're blessed enough to have the opportunity to deep dive and deconstruct your disease to be able to reconstruct something beautiful, Stephanie is the perfect mentor because she's done it twice herself to walk you through that journey. So I highly recommend anyone out there that would like to deeply understand and connect with themselves through this so that their disease or illness has more purpose. And Stephanie's your way walker, the person to show you through that. So I put all the details in below. You can also head to www.kidneycoach.com and go down to resources, hit on coaching, and you'll find her details there as well. then make sure you hit like and subscribe. That way you'll get notified of any time we put up new content. If there's anything that you would like Stephanie specifically to talk to, please put that in the comments below, and her and I can definitely make sure we set that up. And if you want to know more about us, you can head to our Facebook page. You just find us on Facebook/Kidney Coach, Instagram, and of course our website, which is www.kidneycoach.com. Stephanie, as always, thank you so much for your wisdom and for sharing such an authentic part of yourself with our viewers. Hopefully they really resonate with that, because you really get kidney disease to a whole greater level than most people. And hopefully they will find some gems in here that they can integrate into their lives for greater, deeper, more satisfying healing.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for being part of our community. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.